Welcome, curious selves, to Magically Different Mouse. I'm Katie, and today we're saying a farewell to the Walt Disney Studios Park. Now, if anyone worries, Walt Disney Studios Park is not closing, but we now know that from spring 2026, so not that long now, that this park is going to become Disney Adventure World, and the Walt Disney Studios Park, as we knew it, is going to be no more. So in this, I want to capture a snapshot of what the Walt Disney Studios Park looked like just before the new extensions opened. So how it looks like at the moment, which is late September, early October 2025. And also talk a little bit about the history of this park, because it's actually got quite an interesting history and a lot of attractions have changed since I've been here. Now, I'm going to start off by talking about World Premiere, formerly known as Studio One. Now, we have a full tour of World Premiere up on our channel right now, which I will link in the description below. So to see the new space, to look at that. Now, Disney called World Premiere an attraction. Really, it's kind of like a shopping and dining hub. On one side of it, it's got a counter service restaurant, which is now called Hollywood Gardens. On the other side, it's got Mickey's of Hollywood, which is a gift shop. Now, back when this park opened, this building was here, of course, but then it was called Studio One. And actually, on one side of Studio One was a gift shop, and the other side was a restaurant. So in that respect, it's not changed much. But the overall theme has certainly changed. Studio One was very kind of like cheesy Hollywood at night vibes going on with it. It had like light panels you can play with. There was neon everywhere. The restaurant was all different like facades that actually would just hid the fact it was just one big counter service restaurant in there. And the same with the shops on the other side. They haven't changed that much, the facades, but they have been tweaked a little bit. There used to be one that looked like a petrol garage and that kind of thing. So they did actually though close down Studio One to do a big refurb early last year, and we've opened in May this year as World Premiere. It is nice to see this space getting refreshed. It did kind of need it. Studio One was starting to look a little tired. I do kind of miss the excessive cheesiness that was Studio One. I've gone for a much more glamorous vibe now with World Premiere, but it's still a wonderful space and an entrance to this park. So now we're going to go and have a look at the other attractions here and talk a little bit about the history. We're here now behind World Premiere in what is now called World Premiere Plaza. Now, the space that's now World Premiere Plaza used to be split into two areas. On one side we had Production Courtyard, and the other side we had Toon Studio. So we're going to start off talking here in what is now World Premiere Plaza, the former Toon Studio, by talking about Frozen the Celebration in the building behind us. Frozen the Celebration, as it stands now in October 2025, is a show which is in two parts. And you move theatres between them. In the first part of it, you join Anna and Kristoff, who are planning a surprise for Elsa's birthday, and then in the second half of the show, you move into another theatre, which is the Ice Palace on the North Mountain, where you go and give Elsa her surprise. As it's called a musical celebration, as you expect, there's a lot of singing in this show. For Frozen fans, it's very, very popular, and it's always got massive waits for this show. It was also quite small theatres, so that's worth planning. If you want to know more about the big shows, we do have our review of all the theatre productions in Disneyland Paris, which I will pop in link to down in the description below as well. Now, formerly, this building was the Animation Tour, and you can still see Animation Celebration written on the building outside. And the Sorcerer's Hat facade is a lift from the original animation building that's over in California for the Disney Studios. So this is a recreation of that. What the old Animation Tour was that you went into a first room, which was about the history of animation and zoetropes and kind of basic animation. Then you went into the first theatre, which was a kind of amalgamation of clips from different Disney films, showing like the beauty of their animation, which it is. And then in the second theatre, you went into a kind of a live conversation between an animator and an animated Mushu on the screen, that they would then talk about how a character is created by focusing on Mushu. The Animation Celebration closed down quite a few years ago now, I think. I don't know if the exact date off the top of my head. I will insert it to find it out. And it then turned into Frozen. I think because a lot of that kind of behind the scenes of animation stuff, you can do a lot of it now, online. They'll receive YouTube videos. DVDs would have them as like extras, although not many people use DVDs anymore. So I think it was felt that the attraction was just getting a little bit out of date, and that's why they refreshed it and turned it into Frozen. Now, one thing you can still do animation-wise in the exit area of the Frozen show is that you can take an animation class where you just learn how to draw a Disney character. And also down there you can meet Olaf, and that has always been a character meet and greet space as well. So yeah, so that's animation building / Frozen and musical celebration. Let's go on to the next attraction here in Toon Studio / World Premiere Plaza. Okay, so now in the former Toon Studio, now World Premiere Plaza, we need to talk about the Animagique theatre building behind us. Now this currently hosts a show called Mickey and the Magician, and this is a show that includes like magic tricks, Disney songs, Disney characters. The premise of it is that Mickey is working for a magician and wants to learn magic, so he tries to use the magician's tools, and he has encounters of various magical Disney characters along the way. It's a really popular show. When we're here at the moment and filming, it's currently on its kind of seasonal hiatus, but it is worth seeing, Mickey and the Magician, if it is on when you're here. Now, this theatre is called the Animagique building because the original show that was here was called Animagique. And Animagique, I suppose storyline, it wasn't 100% dissimilar to the plot of Magic, which is over in the main park now, except that it was an actual stage show, where obviously that's a 3D film. And what happened in Animagique is that Donald Duck and Mickey are trying to draw in an animation studio. Mickey isn't actually doing very well, Donald's not doing great, so he decides to open up the Disney Film Vault to go and explore different Disney characters, and therefore went through various musical scenes in Disney films until eventually Mickey caught up with him. Now, Animagique was a great show. It involved puppetry, characters, music, lights, etc. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure why they turned it into Mickey the Magician. I'm guessing that Mickey the Magician is a much more technologically advanced show. It's got more recent characters in it. That's probably part of the reason why the change was done. So, I really do enjoy Mickey the Magician. I think it's a great show. I do really miss Animagique. I think because it was the first show that was here and the first one we saw, it kind of has a special spot in my heart. But yeah, now home to Mickey and the Magician. The last attraction in what was formerly known as Toon Studio and is now still part of World Premiere Plaza I'm going to talk about here is the flying carpets over Agrabah, as it's called here. Those who have been to Walt Disney World will probably call this name the Flying Carpets of Aladdin, because that's what it's called in Magic Kingdom in Florida. It's the same ride, it's just in a different location. There's a slight different theming here in that you're going to be part of a film. So you'll be filming as an extra for Aladdin. That's kind of the premise of the ride here, which obviously fits in very well with this park's original movie studio theme that it had going on. It's kind of moving away from that now, so when they did this refurbishment of this ride about a year or so ago, I'm kind of surprised they kept that element in. I thought they were just going to make it just more like the flying carpets that are over in Florida, but they kept it in, so fair enough. It does give us a little bit of unique slant going on. Now, a fun fact about the flying carpets over Agrabah, this is the only original ride left in this park. Now, that's not saying much because when this park opened, it only had 2 rides. So it did have a lot of shows, that's one thing I will say. It wasn't like you literally had nothing to do in this park. There was a lot of shows going on. But I talk about this a little bit in our Weird Facts About Disneyland Paris video. But when this park was opened, it was opened kind of on a bit of a shoestring budget and rushed. So it wasn't the park that Disney would have ideally liked to have built. So they kind of rushed a few elements, and actually Flying Carpets of Agrabah wasn't originally part of the lineup. The only reason it got added in pretty much last minute was because they thought like, hang on, maybe we need more than one ride in this park. So they kind of quickly shoehorned in the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. It was probably an easy one to do because it exists already in Florida, so essentially they could just clone it and bring it over here. So it was a bit of a last minute addition. Although, last minute addition is still going strong to this day. Flying Carpets over Aladdin, it is essentially Dumbo, but you're on a flying carpet and you'll tilt your carpet back and forth like that. Now, as we're here at the moment in October 25, getting to this ride is interesting because there's an awful lot of hoardings because of the construction work going on next to us. So it's kind of like down a little dead end of its own at the moment, which probably explains why we're in the middle of the peak of the day here and it's only a 10-minute wait at the moment, because I don't think anyone's finding it, to be honest, which is a bit of a shame. It's kind of a fun ride. This is a good ride for littles. It's a very fun ride. But yeah, it is also interesting to think that of all the rides that have survived since the beginning of this park, this is the only one. Okay. We're still in World Premiere Plaza, and behind us though is what was technically used to be in Production Courtyard but is now part of World Premiere Plaza, and that is the unmissable Tower of Terror. Now, Tower of Terror is not an original ride to this park, it was added later on. The idea behind Tower of Terror being added was to add some extra thrill to this park and to add some extra rides to this park. It was kind of needed, so this kind of came in with a time period that also introduced things in what was then part of Toon Studios, so things like Crush's Coaster and Cars Quattro Rally. These all kind of like, they came along not dissimilar time periods from one another. But yeah, the whole idea of the Tower of Terror was to add some much needed extra thrill and ride capacity to this park, and also to bring in what is an extremely popular attraction elsewhere into the Walt Disney Studios Park, because Tower of Terror is well known to Disney fans around the world and is extremely popular in every park it's ever been in. Now, the version here in Paris, what you do is, much like the version in Florida, you are visiting an old Hollywood hotel that was struck by lightning on Halloween night in the 1930s, vanishing several people out of one of the elevators. And ever since then, the hotel's been condemned, and you can kind of go into the Twilight Zone. So you then board your service elevator to see if you can find the spirits of those people who were lightninged away. Now, what Tower of Terror essentially is a drop tower ride. So once you're in your lift shaft, you go up and down the lift shaft very quickly, and you do see like projections and scenes featuring the people who were vanished in the original lightning strike back in the 1930s, including particularly here the little girl who has got several warnings about don't go in there and I told you so. Lots of people around the world hold the Tower of Terror here in Paris as the creepiest version of them all and the scariest version of them all. So if you're a fan of horror films, then I think this Tower of Terror is going to be right up your alley. Obviously, it's not for everyone. It can make people motion sick if you don't like heights, you don't like drop tower rides, obviously not the attraction for you, and it does have a height limit as well, which is important to know. But yeah, the Tower of Terror did add an important extra element of ride and thrill to this park when it opened. Right, the two rides we're in between at the moment are now part of Worlds of Pixar, which is one of the few lands that are in this park. When they first opened, they were an extension of Toon Studio, and we have Crush's Coaster on one side and Cars Quattrorelli over here on the other side. These rides open out pretty much around the same time as each other. Crush's Coaster is a Nemo-themed coaster in the dark. What you sit at the back of a turtle shell and you spin as you go on a trip through the EAC, and there's a little dark ride section before that. A lot of people really like Crush. What I will say is that it isn't the longest ride and it always has the most horrendous queues. I would say that of all the rides in both parks, Crush is probably the one which is the trickiest to actually get on because it is always just so overwhelmed with people. But it is, I mean, its popularity is held up though, even though it's quite a few years old now. And Crush is also unusual in that it is unique to this park. There isn't a Crush's Coaster in any other Disney park in the world as it stands at the moment. So it does make this ride a little bit special. Now, Cars Quattrorelli, which I've run at the same time, is essentially a spinner ride. So it's kind of like, it's interesting because it's a different kind of like movement pattern. It's not for teacups, and it's also not the same as rides like Alien Swirling Saucers in Florida or Mater's Junkyard Jamboree that's over in California, which has got a very kind of like a whip ride element of it. Cars Quattrorelli does not have that. What it is just a spinning ride. But it's a spinning ride with extra elements of spin and that you can't control it, so that makes it different for teacups as well. I'm not aware of there being a ride just like Cars Quattrorelli in any of the other parks. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing because I literally hate that ride. But other people seem to love it, and little kids in particular seem to really like it, so your mileage may vary with it. But yeah, again, these two rides were really added to add more rides to this park and more stuff for people to do to keep people coming back. So yeah, they were another good addition to this park, but they're definitely not original. They were in later edition. We're talking about the next section because it was already one go, and that is Toy Story Playland. Now, Toy Story Playland was added to add an extra kid-friendly element to this park, some children's rides going on. And Toy Story Playland, interestingly, is a direct clone of a land that's in Hong Kong Disneyland. And when the park was built, they were working on at a similar time on Hong Kong Disneyland, so it kind of makes sense that there's a cloned element between the two parks there. Now, Toy Story Playland consists of 3 rides. You have RC Racer, which is essentially, it's like a swing boat ride, but inverted because you're on a track instead and drive backwards and forwards, so it's a thrill ride. There's Slinky Dog Zigzag Spin, where you essentially go round and round in a circle quite fast, up and down some little hills on the back of Slinky. It's a very cute ride, and it's actually really quite good fun, Slinky. It is not the same as the Slinky Dog Dash Coaster that you find over in Florida, so if you come here expecting that, you're going to be very disappointed. That much I will say. It is not the same thing. I still quite like this ride though. And then you have the Toy Soldiers Parachute Drop, which is essentially a kind of pull you in the air and then let you drift down sort of ride, so you kind of bounce up and down a few times on it. You could kind of almost call it Tower of Terror Light, in that it's got a much more family-friendly theme, and also that, you know, it's just not as scary, and that there. So I would say with the parachute drop, if you're scared of heights, don't do it. One thing we will say about Toy Story Playland, it is quite a small land, and there is a lot going on. You have people screaming on RC, you have people yelling on Slinky, and you have people who did not holler in on the parachutes as well. Plus it's got a very compact space and very compact paths. So if you suffer from sensory overload or that you don't like crowds, maybe try and hit Toy Story Playland up either very early in the morning or late on in the evening. Don't try and avoid it during the peak of the middle of the day because it will be extremely busy. Now, one thing I'll say about Toy Story Playland now is it's kind of technically part of Worlds of Pixar, but it's also classed as a land in its own right, so it's kind of a sub-land, really. But it is, yeah, if you've got little ones, you've got Toy Story fans in your group, definitely go and explore Toy Story Playland. It's got some really cute theming details in there. We will also say that Toy Story Playland is very pretty at night. And also, Toy Story Playland did predate the Toy Story Land that you find over in Hollywood Studios in Florida. So really, Toy Story Playland walked so that Hollywood Studios' Toy Story Land could run. Now this area of the park is part of Worlds of Pixar, and this was another new addition to the park. This area actually opened in 2014, and this is the area of Paris which is home to Remy's Ratatouille adventure here in this park. Now Remy's, when it first opened, was a very impressive ride technologically. It was kind of very new tech-wise at that point because it combined trackless ride technology with 3D screens, with large props, with scents, and with everything else. It is a very, and to this day, I do think the tech on Remy holds up. It's a really cool ride. It's definitely a family ride. It added some much needed big ride capacity in this park. It is a very popular ride. It still is to this day, you know, because we're like 10 years on from when it first opened now. And at the moment it's got a 50-minute queue behind us, so it is still an extremely popular ride. So this is a good one to hit up early in the morning or late in the evening. I would say that unless you really don't get on screen-based attractions or trackless rides that could do some very light spinning, was going to make you motion sick, I would thoroughly recommend doing Remy. I really do enjoy this ride. I think it's a really fun one, and I actually do think it's one of the better additions they did to this park. Now, when the ride opened, they also opened this entire area behind us that included Bistro Chez Remy, which is the table service restaurant here. And the principle of that restaurant is that you are going to eat in Remy's restaurant from the end of the film. So you're not going to eat in Gusteau's, which I just think doesn't confuse a few people. Essentially, in this restaurant, you are the size of a rat. And you are going in there, so you're sitting on like oversized corks, tables are made out of things like sardine tin lids and all that kind of stuff. The theming in there is second to none. It is a beautifully themed restaurant. It's very fun. The food is fine. It's not haute cuisine really, but it is nice, it's decent. Really, if you go in this restaurant, you are going in there for the theming. Now, also opened was a shop. There's a set of toilets here. So this is kind of like a little mini area in of itself. It did originally it's kind of considered almost its own land, but it's kind of been subsumed into World of Pixar at this point. Now, a couple of tips for this area. It is a bit of a bottleneck. It's not very big in here, and it is very, very popular because the Remy ride is extremely popular. The other thing to note is that they've added a lot of food booths in here. Now, I don't think that's a bad thing per se, because quick food in this park is sincerely lacking. And as Remy is a food-themed ride, effectively, it makes sense having them here. The downside of it is it makes this area even busier. And also, there's a lot of smells coming from those booths. So if you're very sensory sensitive to smell, particularly like cooking smells, you may struggle a little bit in this area, particularly when it's busy and it's kind of like peak food time and a lot of people eating down here. But yeah, actually I do think that this area is probably one of the better additions they did to this park, and we do know that Remy is going down very soon for a massive refurb that's going to take several months, and they're going to upgrade the tech in it, upgrade the screens, which it could use now 10 years down the line, and it's also going to add new props into it. So really looking forward to seeing how they update this ride 10 years on. We're now in what is part of now Worlds of Pixar. This was originally part of Production Courtyard, and this is the remains of the other opening day ride that was in this park. Now, currently it is Cars Road Trip, and the theme of this ride is that you board like a trolley car to go on a site of some of the more quirky roadside attractions on Route 66 in the company of the Cars characters. And the kind of the highlight of it is what they're calling Catastrophe Canyon, which is where you kind of go for a simulated earthquake with flood and fire effects and all that kind of fun stuff. Now, this ride was originally the Studio Tour, and it was a much longer ride with a much more going on with it. And the aim was to recreate kind of like the backlot tours that you used to get over in Hollywood Studios in Florida as well, so like a behind the scenes of movie magic. So you would see actual vehicles that were in films, you would see large scale props that were in films and TV shows. There was a costuming department that you went through. So there's lots of like, the idea was to kind of show the backstage of making the movies, and also the Catastrophe Canyon, as it was called back then, was part of it to show how special effects worked. So you go through for the experience, and then you go around the back to show how they store the water and how they reuse it, how the flame effects are generated, all that kind of fun stuff. It was quite a long experience, and it was kind of like the flagship attraction when this park opened, because it was themed to a movie studio, and going behind the scenes of the movie studio was kind of the first point of it. Now, when it did open with the park, obviously it took up quite a lot of the back of the park. Over time, the studio tour got shorter and shorter and shorter as they took bits of it, and they then built other attractions. So some of it got lost when they put Tower of Terror in, some of it got lost when they put in the bits in Toon Studio and Remy's went in. So it essentially got more and more curtailed. So eventually there was not a lot of it left. There was kind of like the Catastrophe Canyon bit. There was a Rain of Fire bit when there was going to be a dragon in like the remains of burnt out London, which was actually a very cool set. And that was kind of getting you a lot. And also on the old studio tour, you used to have guides for all the different languages, and the English language guide was Jeremy Irons, who was suitably laconic and waiting for his coffee throughout most of this attraction. So I did used to really enjoy the old studio tour. It's a shame that the final version of it that's shut was very much not the prime version of it. It was so heavily curtailed by that point that it wasn't, it really was a shadow of its former self by the time we got to the stage when it closed. I think the reason it closed was that simply because kind of behind the scenes stuff has kind of gone out of fashion a bit in theme parks now. I think a lot of people now want the experience of like being in the films, not seeing how they're made behind the scenes. And again, a lot of things like YouTube specials, DVD extras, that kind of stuff showed all that was going on behind the scenes of the movie, so it was less special seeing it here in the park. So it kind of went dark for a while, and then they brought back the very curtailed version of it now, which we have, which is Cars Road Trip. It's a bit of a funny attraction, Cars Road Trip. You kind of love it or hate it, really. I'm saying that, I think it's fine. The Catastrophe Canyon bit is quite good, but apart from that, there's really not a lot to write home about in this attraction. I do think it's a shame. I do think they could have done more with it, and in some ways, I kind of wish they just built over the entire thing and put in something completely new, because this has still got a large plot of land. You could put something quite impressive here, and maybe with the eventual expansions of Disney Adventure World as this park will be then, that is actually what they're planning to do, because it has got a slight bit of a filler ride vibe going on with it at the moment, as in they just had to put something in while all the building work was going on. Now, Cars Road Trip, we do kind of sit directly next to at the moment what is the Adventure Way, will be the expansion for Disney Adventure World. So it's also up a kind of a dead-end alley out the back of Story Playland at the moment. So I think a lot of people also don't realise there's rides here. So yeah, it's a bit of a funny one. The ride as it is, especially if you've got Cars fans, it's cute. The Catastrophe Canyon bit is worth experiencing once. Personally, I do think the old studio tour was actually better than what we have now. We are now in the area of the park that used to be called Production Courtyard. Nowadays, it's more of World Premiere Plaza, so it's kind of been like subsumed into the area. Now, starting off with the building behind us, this is actually called the Studio Theatre. It's not a very exciting name. Currently, this is home to Together, a Pixar musical adventure. What that is, it's a stage show where you end up going through various Pixar films with the musical bits of them with characters from Toy Story. They're trying to retrieve sheet music from a little girl so she can perform in a concert. It's a very cute show. If you like the Pixar characters, it's great, particularly the Toy Story characters, because they kind of are the stars of this show, really. But yeah, you get to see bits of lots of different Pixar films like Up, Coco, etc. part of it. Now, I used to be in this theatre, but it was actually a film attraction called Cinemagique, and that starred Martin Short as George. When I went in Cinemagique, he started off with an actor in the audience who was allegedly George. Obviously, it wasn't Martin Short each time, it was a bloke with a wig, but anyway. And then he'd end up getting pulled into the film world, and then they go through various famous films and scenes, trying to escape, but also gradually falling in love with a film actress that's on the way. The film actress was a famous French actress. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but I will put it in up here, so I'll look her up. It also starred Gene Wilman as the saucer in it as well. I love Cinemagique. I thought that was a great attraction. Yes, the films that were featured in it were starting to get a little bit out of date. There was films in it that were real classics, like Star Wars, like Titanic is obviously a very well-known film. They had a bit from whatever the French version is of Singing in the Rain that was featured in it, so it went through lots of different kind of genres of film. Yeah, I really love Cinemagique and I do miss it. Much as Together is a great show, and it really is, it's well worth seeing. I personally think I prefer Cinemagique out of the two, but that's just me. But I do think that maybe it was considered they could put something a bit more interactive, featuring actual characters in this space. And obviously Pixar ties in more with the worlds of Pixar that's in this park as well. Now, also in this courtyard area, we have Studio D behind us. Now that's a bit of an interesting building. When Studio D opened, it was a TV studio, a TV studio for Disney Channel France. And in theory, you could walk through it and see how TV programs are made. There's a bit of an issue with Studio D and its TV tour in that literally hardly anything was made in there. So that 9 times out of 10 when you went through that building, you didn't see anything getting made, you just walked around a bit of a studio. It didn't last very long, let's just say. It kind of quickly died a quiet death, and ever since then this space has been kind of split into 2 parts. One part that has been around for quite a while is Stitch Live. Now in Stitch is an interactive show where you are talking to an animated Stitch on the screen in real time, and the idea is that he's stolen in a spaceship and you're trying to communicate with him to help get him home. It's kind of the principle of it. There's a lot of audience interaction with this show. Kids love it. It's one of the, I think actually it's the only show in this park which has specific French and English screenings. So do try and make sure you're getting the right language when you see this show, because otherwise you're going to be utterly clueless of what on earth Stitch is talking about. But yeah, it's a really good, it is a nice, sweet show. It's worth seeing. Unless you have social anxiety about talking in front of an audience, then maybe don't do it, because it's a little bit social anxiety inducing. The rest of this building, now currently it's housed a Mickey Mouse meet and greet, and the reason for that is that Mickey's main meet and greet in Fantasyland and the other park is currently closed for refurbishment, so they've kind of shipped him over here. Studio D, before that theatre bit, was actually home of a Disney Junior / Playhouse Disney show, and that has gone through a lot of different iterations in its time. There was like Disney Junior play on stage where they had puppets, a big part of it. The most recent version of that show was Mickey's Dream Factory, which was a kind of like Disney Junior focused show with the Mickey Mouse characters. That has now been closed down for quite a while, but it actually is coming back next year. They've literally announced within the last couple of weeks that Minnie's Dream Factory is opening up in February 2026 in this space. And it's actually, interestingly, not going to have Mickey Mouse in it. It's going to be Minnie, Daisy, Donald and Chip and Dale are going to be the characters in that show. Now, I'm wondering if it's because some of the other characters get more of a shining over in Mickey the Magician. So, you know, Mickey's really got one show in this park, he probably doesn't need a second. So that might be why. And also, you know, if he's busy with one show, he can't be in this show as well. He's a busy mouse. Here you go, he's got to get around this time. So I think that's why they might be putting this into Minnie's Dream Factory. So yeah, interesting to see how this space develops there. Now, the kind of the space that we're in, just the general courtyard area, this was also once the show bit for Stars and Cars on Parade. Now, when the Studios Park opened, it actually had a full-on parade that just ran through the park. And that, even though it was a fun parade, it had a very film-esque theme, as you can imagine. That then was turned into Stars and Cars on Parade. Now, Stars and Cars was actually a parade that used to be in Hollywood Studios, but back then it was MGM Studios in Florida, and they brought most of the vehicles over here. We didn't get the Star Wars vehicle over here, which I'm still grumpy about, because Darth Vader on the back of a Cadillac sounds like great fun. But anyway, we got most of the cars here, but interestingly for that parade, it wasn't just a they go for the park parade. They stopped and had a whole like show scene performance bit in this area. Unfortunately, it was way too small an area for the amount of people who wanted to see that parade. It was only on once a day, so yeah, it essentially also completely bottlenecked this park. You could not move in this area whatsoever. So my guess is that's why they ditched the parades in this park, especially at the moment. You could not run a parade in this park. It is too small, the spaces are too cramped, you would just block up the entire park. But yeah, so that sadly has long gone. It's something that's no longer offered in this park. Whether we'll ever get anything like that again in this park, honestly, I think doubtful, unless they want to do something around the new lake that's going in as part of the Adventure World expansion that's going to have World of Frozen and Lion King on it. Maybe they could use the promenade of that lake. I don't know how wide it's going to be, because obviously it's not open yet, we haven't seen it. Potentially, that's certainly going to be the home of the Lagoon show, so a nighttime spectacular for this park. But yeah, so as it stands, there is no parade in this park, and we don't know if there's ever going to be one in the future. We've now entered Avengers Campus as it stands today. Now, when this park opened, this part of the park was open, but it was called the Backlot. And the idea here was that you're going very much behind the scenes of how movies were created. Now, the ride that is sitting behind us now is Web Slingers. Now, what Web Slingers is, it's an interactive shooter attraction where you're helping Spider-Man defeat the spider bots that are threatening to take over Avengers Campus. It's a really interesting ride because you don't use any kind of like blaster weapons or anything like that like you do over in Buzz Lightyear in the other park. Here it's all done through motion capture and you just move your arms. I do absolutely love web slingers. I think it's a great attraction. It's so much fun. It can be very competitive. It will kill your arms. If you have shoulder issues, maybe try not to get too competitive on this ride because otherwise you're at serious risk of hurting yourself, I feel like. And if you've got a broken arm, maybe just try it with one arm. Yeah, I really wouldn't try and put too much effort into it because you could really hurt yourself. I have given myself severe shoulder and arm strain on this ride before because my joints are hypermobile and they tend to pop in and out, so yeah, just something to be mindful of. Having said that, I can get very competitive with stuff like this, and so I always try to get really involved. Now, back before Avengers Campus existed, back before web slingers existed, the space that this building is now was home to Armageddon Special Effects Spectacular. Now, Armageddon was a funny one. It was a stand-up show in that you kind of did this whole pre-show bit where you had a bit of a preamble about how special effects are done in films. And then you went into like the Russian space station that features in Armageddon, which gets destroyed by the small meteors that are coming before the big honking meteors that's going to destroy the Earth. You were on the space station with the Russian cosmonaut while that scene is happening. So when you stood around, there were effects like water, steam blast, you could see on the screen, like the thing striking the ship. The floor would shake, it would look like stuff was potentially breaking around you, and there was massive fireballs in the middle of the room. And then the floor dropped at the end of the show, just kind of like do that final surprise, which is meant to be when the station's getting destroyed. Is this the only Disney attraction that you technically may have died on because the station gets destroyed in it? Big question. I don't know the answer to that. I have to think about that. Anyway, so that's what Armageddon was. Now, Armageddon was a bit of a funny beast. It kind of, when it first opened, it was kind of considered a bit cutting edge, but it was kind of weird. The setup of the room you were standing in for the main show, you never really knew where to stand because stuff happened kind of all around you, which in some ways was cool and it was very immersive. But yeah, some people went into it not really knowing what's going on. Some people expected something more out of it. Also, because it had like all the fire and stuff effects, it often had quite restricted opening hours and it used to go down quite a bit. Obviously, when this park opened, Armageddon was literally only a few years old. So when this park was being built, Armageddon was like one of the biggest smash hits that Disney had made them in live action for a very long time in special effects. So it kind of makes sense it was here. But yeah, essentially, people got less interested in Armageddon. People got less interested in those kind of like special effects shows, the standing ones. It kind of went the same way as like the Twister attraction that used to be over in Universal Studios in Florida. That's gone. The old Ghostbusters attraction in Florida, that's gone. Attractions like this are just kind of dying out. I just don't think people are so interested in them anymore, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, when they converted this space to Avengers Campus, they essentially leveled the Armageddon building. This isn't even the same show building. It is a complete rebuild from the ground up of that space. Now, what did also used to be out here next to the Armageddon building, so it would have been kind of where the side of the Web Slingers building is now. There used to be an actual one of like the mining digger vehicle that was actually used in the film was out here. So it's actually a real life film prop that you could see here. So yeah, I mean, I haven't experienced Armageddon. It was kind of fun. It was fine. I don't think it's the best attraction Disney ever did, but it did fit the vibe of this park when it opened with its kind of behind the scenes studios vibe. Okay, also here in Avengers Campus, we have behind us what is now Pym Kitchen, which is a buffet restaurant themed to the Ant-Man films. The idea is that the food you're eating on the buffet has been treated by Pym particles, so it's either very, very big or very, very small compared to what you'd expect. It's a really fun restaurant actually, we do like Pym Test Kitchen. Now, before that, I believe this was called Restaurant of the Stars. The idea was a kind of like a behind the scenes, like where the stars would go and eat vibe to it. It was still a buffet, so in that respect this restaurant hasn't changed, and it still offered a kind of like American-esque cuisine of like different stuff, so that hasn't changed either. The only kind of reason I wanted to mention this restaurant is kind of a bit of an honourable mention is because for a while they would bring round Remy on like a little tray, and he would like leave under like a dish cover, and they lift him off and there's this little puppet Remy that was actually like rat size compared to you as a human size that you could interact with, and it was so stinking cute, it was so adorable. That of course stopped when Bistro Chez Remy and the Ratatouille Adventure area opened in 2014 because, you know, you could actually dine in Remy's restaurant and you didn't see a small puppet version of him here, but I still kind of miss that, it was very, very cute. Okay, now the space I'm going to talk about next, you can't actually see in a moment, because that is the theatre that is currently held in Alice and the Queen of Hearts Return to Neverland. Now, that show is a very seasonal show. It literally runs May to September. We're here in late September, early October, and it's already closed for the season. And now, because that's happened, and because of all the work that's going on in this park, we've essentially walled off entirely where that theatre is, so we couldn't even take you close to it. So we'll probably some B-roll from when we saw a little bit of the show last time we were here. Now, Alice and the Queen of Hearts is essentially a musical stunt show. Alice and the Queen of Hearts are having song off, because of course they are, and there's like BMX stunts, trampolining, and all that kind of stuff that goes around it. It's a shame it's such a limited performance window, that show, because it is on in such a short part of the year, but the problem is because the actual stage is outside, then it means that a lot of the stunts are unsafe to perform if it's too icy, too wet, too cold, too anything else. So yeah, that's why. Now, this space, when this park first opened, was home to Light Motors Action. Now, Light Motors Action was a car stunt show. The idea behind it was that you sat in very big bleacher seating and you watched cars go through the stunts that you see in a lot of action films. So things like how they would pull up very close to each other, how motorbike stunts were done. There's a jet ski portion of it as well. There was a bit when the cars would balance on two wheels, when they're going ramps, when the car would drive really cool backwards. It was a really, really fun show, and it was a nice insight into how a lot of these cool stunts were done. Light Motors Action actually was popular enough here that during the Disney Parks kind of celebration over in Walt Disney World, when they were celebrating Walt's birthday, they actually transferred the show from here to what is now Disney Hollywood Studios. Doesn't exist anymore there either, because that's now underneath what is now Galaxy's Edge. But it did used to exist, and it was over in Hollywood Studios too, in kind of like the backlot bit. Now, Motors Action, well, apart from the fact that maybe it wouldn't have fit the Avengers Campus vibe, because we're kind of on the edge of Avengers Campus here, where the old entrance used to be behind us. But the entrance of Alice is nowhere near here. It's technically that is now classed as a World Premiere Plaza attraction, so they could have kept it in for that reason. My guess with Light Motors Action is that A, again, that kind of behind the scenes of the movie vibe isn't what this park's about anymore. And B, my guess is it was expensive to run. And also there were elements of it that could only be done very seasonally. Although Alice and the Queen of Hearts only runs for a few months each year. So I think the seasonal aspect, there's less of an argument for that, because why replace something that could only run seasonally with something that only runs seasonally and a much less big window. Light Motors Action, whenever it could, would run year round. It just was sometimes you'd have to cancel or curtail shows if it was very icy or very cold or very wet. But yeah, so I kind of miss Light Motors Action, and it's a shame that it went. It's nice that they've kept the theatre space going and that is now being used for Alice and the Queen of Hearts. Interestingly, on all the posters you see for Disney Adventure World as it stands at the moment, a lot of the concept art that surrounds by world premiere and that kind of stuff, which celebrates lands yet to come in this park, like the Lion King, like the one of Frozen, there is literally nothing Alice in Wonderland on them whatsoever, which makes me think that this theatre and this show may not be considered a permanent addition to this park. I wonder if once the other Disney Adventure World expansions are done, they're going to transform that theatre into something else, or maybe even get rid of that space and build on it. But yeah, I do wonder if maybe the cars are very expensive to maintain, and that's why they've got their Light Motors Action. But yeah, so it's kind of like that went through a complete switch, because it's not only a completely different show in that space, it's in a completely different land, and it's a very different vibe. But yeah, so Light Motors Action, long gone, but Alice and the Queen of Hearts is certainly here to experience if you're here in the right months, and for now. Okay, so the last attraction I'm going to talk about that was here when the park first opened, and is still here in a version thereof now. It's still here at Avengers Campus, and we're talking behind us is Avengers Flight Force. Now, Avengers Flight Force is a very high intensity roller coaster in the dark. Essentially, you're helping Iron Man and Captain Marvel save the world, because of course you are. So you kind of board in the spaceship and you go through space. This has a very, very high speed, high G launch. You go to several inversions in this ride. It's quite short, but it is a very, very high intensity coaster, and it's a big thrill ride. Now, this was always a big thrill ride in that respect, because this used to be Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith. Now, Disney Parks fan are going to recognise that name, because there is another Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith over in Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, Disney Hollywood Studios may be about to retheme their version to the Muppets. Paris got way ahead of them on the retheming of it, because they then rethemed Rock and Roller Coaster to Avengers Flight Force. I will say, the track layout, the coaster itself, is exactly the same. This is still Rock and Roller Coaster at its core. It just now has been completely Avengersified, and Aerosmith's long gone. Yeah, so this is another attraction that has gone through some changes, I think. The other thing that did change on this a lot is the facade, because it used to be a very flat building and now it's got this big curved facade we can see going on behind us with like the Quinjet and stuff. Obviously that makes it fit way better into this land. The old flat like a roller coaster building will not fit at all. So yeah, so that's kind of it of looking at what's here now and what used to be when it comes to Walt Disney Studios Park. Now looking ahead to Disney Adventure World, we do have quite a lot to look forward to. There's going to be Adventure Way, which is going to have in it an up swinging chair ride, a Tangled themed spinning ride, so kind of like the teacups but prettier. And also like an English garden, like as a kind of like sitting and relaxing area, which I think would be very nice, because there's one thing that this park lacks at the moment is that kind of space. And then of course there's going to be the big lagoon area. It's going to have on it a character dining restaurant, specifically Princess Dining, World of Frozen, which we now know is opening in spring 2026, and eventually the World of the Lion King, or World of Pride Rock, that will be opening at a date to be confirmed. Do not expect it to open before 2028 would be my guess, because they've literally just broken ground on that. And it takes a while to build a roller coaster. Well, in that case, actually, it's a log flume ride, so it's going to be a while. So there is a lot to look forward to in the future of this park. It is also going to be getting its own nighttime spectacular on the lagoon that World of Frozen and the Lion King are going to be sitting on, which is going to be a mixture of drones, fountains, projections, and fireworks. So we don't know the launch date for that or what it's going to be called yet. We're assuming it's going to launch when World of Frozen opens in spring next year, mainly because they're already testing for it. So they obviously are getting ahead with the planning for that show. So yeah, there is a lot to look forward to in this park. But much as I do think this park needs for TLC, it needs the expansion, it needs the improvement. This was always the unloved cousin of Disney parks. It kind of felt like a bit, because it was so small, so compact. It had, compared to some of the other parks out there, so little going on, and compared to its big sister next door, the original Disneyland Paris Park, it did feel like a somewhat neglected little sibling of that park that people kind of like used to kind of overlook a bit. So I am pleased to see this park getting the TLC it deserves, and it does deserve to be seen as a big park. I will miss a bit the old film studio theme. I will miss some of the attractions I do miss. I do miss Cinemagique and Animagique quite a bit, the shows that used to be here. They were great shows. It's a shame they've gone. But of course, one thing that Walt Disney himself said is Disney parks will always keep changing, they'll keep growing, they'll keep evolving, and Walt Disney Studios Park is no different. So we bid a fond farewell to Walt Disney Studios Park, but we look forward to welcoming Disney Adventure World when it comes to spring 2026. Now, if you like this video, please do come and visit us on our blog, which is magicallydifferentmouse.com. If you subscribe to our blogs while you're there, you'll not only receive our blogs right into your email inbox every time we post, but you'll also receive a free copy of our guide to attraction accessibility in Disneyland Paris, which only costs £3, and you can also buy it for the website. Do please also like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ding the alerts bell so you're always notified when we post a new video. And also come and see us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Blue Sky, and we'll post all those links in the text down below. But thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you real soon. Bye bye.